Hello everybody, Dominic from CMAC here with another M50 tutorial. Today I'll be covering the button layout of the camera. So what do all the symbols mean? What do they do exactly? So make sure you get a pen and paper ready to write down notes. It's going to be a lot of information. But aside from that, let's get right into it. So first, let's take a look at the bottom of the camera as the battery compartment is located there. You'll see a small switch. Push that across slightly and the lid will open. Now take one of the batteries and make sure you insert the battery correctly. You can tell by lining up the copper spots on the battery with the copper prongs on the inside of the camera. When you want to remove the battery, just press against the gray switch here on the side. You'll also notice a small gap by where the battery would be. This is where you insert a Class 10 SD card. To turn on the camera, make sure you have the battery inserted and flip this switch to turn on the camera. If the lens is locked, the camera will tell you to unlock the lens. You can do so by holding the lock switch and twisting the lens clockwise until the focal length indicator reaches at least 15 millimeters. You can see this warning by either looking through the viewfinder or by opening the LCD screen. The LCD screen will also show a list of options you can change in conjunction with the various buttons I'm about to go over. Right next to the power switch, you will notice a dial with various icons. First, video record. This is to set your camera to record video, and you have two modes to pick from: manual or automatic. In automatic, the camera will decide how bright or dark the recorded image will be and set the shutter, aperture, and ISO accordingly. In manual, you will be able to dial in shutter, aperture, and ISO yourself. The subsequent modes are for photography, and if you wish to learn more about these, keep watching. Otherwise, you can jump ahead for more video information. M is for manual mode. This is to have full control of your settings when taking photos. AV is aperture priority. You have full control over the f-stop setting while the camera determines your shutter speed and ISO automatically. TV is shutter priority. Like with aperture, you have full control over the shutter speed while the camera determines the other two settings. P is for program. This is similar to auto, but you're still able to adjust image brightness, focal point, and other settings. A positive is Scene Intelligent Auto. This is basically the camera's full auto mode. A with the film icon is Hybrid Auto. This is a cool feature as you're able to create a video out of your photos. So these last two, for scene selection and creative filters, these are just special photo effects while doing photography. Now let's move on to these other buttons above the dial, and first you'll notice this large button in the middle. This is the shutter button, and it's really only used for when taking pictures just by pressing the button and then you just take the photo. Around the shutter button is a ring you're able to turn left or right, and you use it to change certain settings. If you're in manual mode, the specific setting is shutter speed, and when I turn the ring, the speed changes. And you're able to see this on the LCD screen in real time. If I were to shoot in AV or aperture priority mode, the ring would instead change to the f-stop, with other settings change automatically for brightness. You can see this by noticing an orange gear appear on the screen by the shutter and aperture buttons respectively. You're still able to use the LCD to make changes to these same settings, but the ring definitely helps speed up the process of changing them. Off to the left of the shutter is a small button that says MFN. This is short for multifunction. Use this to adjust the ISO in conjunction with the same ring. You're still able to use the touchscreen to change these settings. To the right of the shutter is a red dot. This is to start a video recording. Now let's move on to the back of the camera. In the top right corner, there is an asterisk button to temporarily lock your exposure settings depending on whatever lighting the camera is reading when using auto settings. Below it is the autofocus point selection button. Press this to determine the location of your autofocus point. You can also do the same thing when in AF mode by pressing on the LCD screen, and you'll see a box appear on the screen. Next down is the info button. When utilizing the LCD screen, you can determine how much information can appear on the screen, such as recording resolution, the histogram, and several other features. Just keep pressing the button to see how much detail you want on screen or none at all. You'll also be able to make all your main settings appear on the screen by accessing the quick control screen. Press info again to go back to frame. Now we have this larger button that's actually composed of 5 buttons. Think of it like the arrow and select buttons on a TV remote. The top is your exposure compensation button. If you have your screen open, and depending if it's on the image frame or quick control screen, you'll notice that same orange gear appears on either the shutter, aperture, or the light balance options, and it'll switch between those options by pressing that top button. And then using that same shutter ring I mentioned earlier, you'll be able to adjust those settings quickly. Please note that the light meter is only accessible if your ISO is set to automatic, at which point it will change the exposure of the final image. Negative numbers create darker images, positive numbers are more bright, and 0 is what the camera thinks will be a balanced image. The left button is to quickly switch between auto and manual focus modes. The right button is to either turn the flash on or off. You have to manually open the flash on top of the camera. You can always change this button to be instead something a bit more useful for video, like adjusting your audio levels, which you can do so in the menu. And the bottom is the trash icon. When you're previewing videos or photos you've taken via the play button on the bottom left, you can delete these one at a time if you wanted to. The fifth button is the quick control button. Pressing this will launch the quick menu while in recording mode and also acts as the select button in any menu mode. And lastly, the menu button on the bottom right. Accessing the menu will bring up several settings for you to change at your leisure, like audio, playback, wireless, formatting, and many more. You can navigate the menu by using the 5-button cluster as a directional pad and select button. I'll be covering some important menu settings in a different tutorial. And that does it for this video tutorial. I know that was a lot of information to cover, but I hope you found it very insightful. Now understanding the button layout of the camera should help go a long way of, quickly navigating the menu, quickly adjusting settings, and should make production a lot easier and quicker for you in the long run. You can catch this along with other video tutorials on our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram via @CMAC TV, and as always on our cable and YouTube channels. I'll catch you in the next video. Until then, take care everybody.